I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. Back in January, the guest I'm about to have on came on and said, and this was everybody was all a fritter. We're going to have the biggest year yet. This is going crazy. We're going to go sky high. And he says, we're topping out right now. We're getting in the process of topping out. He said, I quote, I'm more worried about a 40% downside plunge than I am about 5% more. He called it within 2% of the top back in late January. And I'm talking about the world-renowned cycle expert in geopolitical and economic cycles, Charles Nenner. Charles Nenner, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Thank you. Thank you. The way you talk about me, I'm interested myself, what I'm going to say.
Well, you also came back on after that call in March, and we were down 20%. And you said, we're halfway there. And sure enough, we were down about, 38%? You and Bull Pony are the only two people that called us. Pony said something like that we were going to go down to between 35 and 40%. But hey, let's talk about you. And so you were right. You stuck by your guns, and you're still calling for a 5,000 Dow. But yet now we have crazy time of the money printing extravaganza where they're printing out trillion. The Fed has doubled its balance sheet, and they say they're going to go to 10 or 11 trillion. They went from 3.7 trillion to over 7 trillion in their balance sheet. What's going on now with the market? Keep chugging along. Where are we now? Is the party back on? Is the danger over?
Well, first of all, my selling at the time when we were at the high, we had 0 stocks, and it was based on all kinds of indicators, and there was no virus yet. That's why I tell people it's very interesting that we have a writer who writes about the black swan, and instead of trying to figure out what the black swan is going to be, see, the black swan, I think his definition is that something's going to happen, but you don't know what. And I've always been saying, and it's in all my work of the last 30 years, I don't care what's going to happen. I want to know when it's going to happen. So I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't know what was going to happen. And it happened to be a virus. So everybody's concentrating on the virus and they're missing the big picture. Now, the big bounce, we have been on a bicycle for a long time because, as you understand my work, the cycle was up. Now the cycle is up into the 3rd week of June. So now things start to be risky, and we're looking for a short-term sell levels, and we're going to lighten up because I trust the cycles, and we'll see what happens the 3rd week. Now, what happened over here is not so crazy. I have shown my subscribers what happened in 1929 and what happened in 1973, 74, and what happened in the 2000 crash, and what happened in the 2007-8 crash. And I did that because I hear the media say, well, the market knows much more than we think. Well, what happened in those bounces? There were huge bounces after the crash in 1929, after the crash of 1973, 74, and after that, the market only came down. So obviously, the market didn't know what was going to happen. But it's very hard to do something about these rumors. I was laughing today. I told my wife because, when I got out of the market, I didn't like it. Now they say since February, there is officially a recession. So actually, that's what we saw. But the interesting thing is how they put it was officially a recession. Well, once a long time ago, I don't know who it was, somebody made a definition of what a recession is. And now it's an official recession. What is official about it? So people make up these stories, and it puts everybody on the wrong foot, and that's why most people don't make money. Now here in Amsterdam, where I'm sitting, they write about 100,000 of people that open accounts at brokerage firms that never were in the market. Obviously, those are not the very educated investors. They're just investors that invest because it's going up. So that's a bit worrisome. So according to my numbers, there are two parties who make this bounce go up, that are the short coverers, people who are short, and the newcomers in the market. And it's very normal, this bounce that happened, if you look at all the other market crashes. And I know that the NASDAQ made a new high, but if you look at it, it's mostly the FANG stocks that are doing it. So I don't look too much at that. I look at the Dow Jones, I look at the Russell 2000, and I look at the S&P. So again, there's nothing new what happens over here. Just what I wanted to mention about printing money and supporting markets. When I was at Goldman Sachs, I pinpointed in February 2000 the high, and I showed them what happened in 1929. And every time when the interest rates were lowered, the market popped and it went lower and lower and lower. And I think the same is going to happen over here. I don't think you can artificially stop a situation as bad as it is right now. So based on economics, based on that the S&P is almost the most expensive in the last 100 years, I don't know what they're talking about. Numbers don't seem to change anything. So it's all based on emotions. And if you do an overlay, what happened in 1929, what happened now, you see it's not so strange what's going on.
Well, you say that you can't stop what's going to happen with it as bad as it is right now. What do you mean by that?
Well, things have to go their way. You cannot keep these, what I call the super cycle that started, according to me, in 1870. You cannot keep it going and lowering interest rates and lowering interest without having consequences. One of the consequences is, somebody asked me, how is it possible that big firms are, after 4, 5, 6 weeks, in financial trouble? Well, they're in financial trouble because the interest rates are so low. So they came up with the idea, why pay dividend? Let's take a loan, interest is low, let's buy back our own stocks. And then the stock market came down and the stocks are worth less, and that's why they don't have cash. Another thing is, we have in Europe these pension funds that, according to the law, have to be, I think, 70% in bonds, and the negative interest rates. So they're buying billions and billions in negative interest rates. So how are these people going to get their pensions? So is there going to be any buying power in Europe? So these things have consequences that nobody thinks about.
With zero interest rates. So where do we go from here? You say we're topping out in 3 weeks.
No, I think it depends on which market. It's about between the 22nd and 26th of June.
And then how far do you expect it to go down the next shot?
I still think it'll go down all the way down. I think the low will only be there in 2022.
So you still think that we're going to have this pattern of lower lows and lower highs? Explain.
Right.
Explain lower lows and lower highs.
Because market goes in certain waves. It doesn't go down. It's like a ball that you throw up in the air, and then until it's on the ground, it goes down, it goes up again, it goes down, lower, high. That's how things work in nature. Now, until now, it looked very strange. How can Dow go to 5,000? But since I'm a medical doctor and I'm in touch with my old friends who are still in medicine, we're 90% sure there's going to be a second wave like there was in 1918 and in the mid 1900s, and it's going to be much worse.
Of COVID, of the
yes.
Coronavirus. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So even if you don't look at it like this, that means you're just gambling on the virus. Now, my sources, I sound like a politician, but my sources say it could be very likely, like they never found a vaccination for AIDS, that they're never going to find a vaccination. And my sources says that it seems now that the immune system only works for 4 or 5 months after you have been sick. So after that, everybody's going to be sick again. So people take their hard-earned money and they just gamble on the fact that the virus situation is over. I'm not talking about my cycles. I just wonder how you can do that.
And you also, this is something else you talked about. We have a lot of ground to cover here. This is another wild thing. You said with all the protests going on all Antifa and Black Lives Matter, which is really just what they really should call it is communist Marxist lives matter, and don't you dare disagree with our narrative, which is pretty scary, especially for a lot of people around the world. And so you forecasted, and this is when before we had any of this protest and riots and stuff, and you said something to the effect of, I don't have it perfect, but it's pretty close, that you worry less about a foreign war at this point than you do about a political or a civil war, civil unrest. Could you explain, because it looks like you were right on the money there. Could you explain what you're seeing now and how you came to that conclusion?
Well, again, I think things don't move at random. So as a market doesn't move at random, it moves in certain times and in certain levels. Also, social developments move in cycles. The warming of the earth is a cycle. So there's a 60-year cycle of social unrest, and the lifetime was in the 60s. So it's very simple that after 60 years now, we can make an analysis, say, 60 years, somebody was 20 years old, and then in the 60s, and now he's 80, 90, or he's not there anymore. So I have to start all over again. There are all kinds of explanations as why a stock goes up and down. We don't know that. I came to the conclusion, and I always worry because, like you said, you cannot say whatever is true anymore, that the warming cycle is almost over. Now, based on my cycles, it's almost over. If the virus is going to be a long-term situation, then, of course, the warming cycle is over because the human input, if it already does something, is going to be less. So then people say, well, you were saved by the fact that there's a virus and the whole economy is not functioning anymore. It doesn't matter what the reason is. The world takes care of itself. So if the warming of the earth has to stop at a certain point, something is going to happen. So the social unrest just started. And the other thing I mentioned about 3-4 years ago was talking about a Kondrashev cycle, who says that every so many years, let's say 60 years, a new place becomes the leader in economics. And then we said, Europe was on the low, United States is in the middle, and where it's happening now for the next 60 or 100 years is the East. It's going to be India, China, Singapore, Australia. And I told you, I think last year, I am really surprised how fast Americans are now going according to the Kondrashev cycle, how busy they are to destruct the United States this fast.
What do you mean by that, destroy the United States? You mean the enemies of the United States to destroy the United States?
No, they destroy themselves.
Is this part of the social unrest cycle that you talked about? Is it this is part of what the destruction is?
No, they're different cycles. One is an economic cycle.
Yep.
And one is a social unrest cycle. Maybe they go hand in hand, I'm not sure. But if you have a country that doesn't allow you to say the truth anymore, how will you survive? Right? It's really amazing what's going on there.
You're saying about people who are punished for questioning Black Lives Matter and questioning the narrative. Now the commissioner of the NFL, we were wrong. We're behind Black Lives Matter, which is really Antifa and communism.
And everybody always apologizes. I don't think I mean it. I mean, not everybody's that stupid. They speak their mind, and then under pressure says, I apologize. I don't think they really apologize. So you can't open your mouth anymore. And in universities, you cannot be invited to say whatever you want. It leads to violence. So that's the end of a society.
And back to, and how long do you think this social unrest cycle? Let's go back to that with all the, it's the peg that's going on right now in terms of all the protests and the riots and all the burnings and busted windows and all that. How long do you think the social unrest cycle will last for? Will it turn into a civil war?
Well, short term, it will last for 10, 15 years. Will it turn into a civil war? That I don't know, because there haven't been that many civil wars. But if, I lived 20 years in the United States, and I'm happy to be here, because to be in a society where you let people protest and then steal from and loot all the businesses and not mention it, and where policemen are shot, I think 4 or 5 are shot, and not mention it, nobody mentions it. It's not a society that feels comfortable at the moment.
So rough times still ahead for America.
Much more than you think, and it's going to be worse and worse.
Wow. Why do you say that it's going to be worse and worse?
Because it only started. Look what happened in the 60s. Look how extreme it came if you look what happened, they killed Martin Luther King, they killed Bobby Kennedy, they killed his brother, the president. I mean, these things get out of hands because if you don't stop it, it gets out of hand. So if you don't stop people looting, it gets out of hand.
And well, let's move on to another big call that you made, which still looks like this is a couple of years ago when they were all with the president's a Russian spy and Russia's manipulating it's Russia, and Russia like Russia, Russia. And you came on and said, no. China. China's going to be a problem. Could you talk to us about your call? And wow, we look like the trade deal's falling apart. We look like the president and a lot of everybody in the world is saying that they spread this COVID virus. They didn't handle it well. They shut down flights out of Wuhan, where the virus came from, inside China. But let them fly all over the world. A lot of people are upset with China and are pinning them with this virus pandemic. And the WHO covered up, blah, blah, blah. But you clearly, well ahead of time, identified China is going to be the big problem spot. Where are we stand now?
Well, that's going to be the big problem. And a couple of years ago, it says the trick is going to be the fight over the islands that are producing over there in the Chinese Sea. How do I do that? There were cycles, and the cycles based on economic expansion. And it was clear that it goes together. And Russia was not the one who's going to do economic expansion. It's going to be India or China. And I didn't think India would be in a situation that they're going to be very active in the politics. So China was left.
And you still think that China is wounded economically right now because of all this manufacturing shutdown and some of the countries, Japan removed a lot of their manufacturing, or is in the process of doing that. There's calls to remove manufacturing in the United States, in Congress, in the Senate, to bring it back home to the United States. Is China going to suffer?
No, not really. But the other point I want to make is that it's really gaining now momentum. What happened in Persia? I mean, I say in a couple of years, Europe is going to be in position that Iran says, if you don't do this and this and this, we're going to send some rockets over and destroy you. And now the Europeans, they're going to give in. It's the same thing that happened before the Second World War. These things are in cycles, and people never learn. So I add now to the list what's going to happen in Iran. And I don't think United States can do much about it because, like they force now, the president cannot order an attack anymore, not even a small attack, whenever he wants. And until he decides, it's going to be too late. So the world is in for a major, major disaster.
What do you think the disaster will look like?
Well, as you know, is that the cycles tell you when the war is going to be. Like the cycles tell you when the market's going up, and the price targets tell you how high a stock is going to go and how high the market goes. That's why. I think our target was 33.90 on S&P, and that's why it went out. And if you do this with the war cycles, it's going to be a huge amount of casualties that's going to be there, and there's nowhere to hide. So it's not the problem, the warming. The problem is it's 5 minutes past 12. We have nobody who understands anything. I talk to American diplomats, and all they say all the time is, this is the best in the United States, is the best in the world. I says, you have never been outside the United States. How do you know what's the best? Like the medicine is the best in the world. Believe me, it's not. This is the best in the world. Not. Democracy is the best in the world. It's not. So as long as you think you're the best in the world, there's not much to fix. And it's like an island, United States. They have no idea compared to other countries what's going on. And they have no historic understanding to understand how to deal with the threats and the military threats that are going to be there soon.
The biggest threat that's going to be here soon is China, Russia, Iran, all the above? What are the military threats that are going to be there soon?
Well, I think the way it looks is going to be China and Iran, and probably they in tandem. Like in the Second World War, we had Turkey and Germany. Now, what did Turkey have to do with Germany? There are all kinds of things they had in common, and so they're gonna put something together. The only one that keeps Iran alive now is Russia and China, who still do business with them. And I guess, if something's going to happen, they're going to support them.
Let's come around to the gold market. I saw some headline the other day. Here we have just massive money printing. I mean, you can't get around it. Congress is passing, $2 trillion bills like they're handing out chiclets. The Federal Reserve has doubled their balance sheet, and it's going to even higher. And yet, gold is around 1,700. Well, it's higher than it was when you said that it was going to go up. Yes, but obviously they're suppressing the price of gold. What is going on with gold and silver?
Well, it stays with the same thing. The first target is 2,500. The bull market is going to go up till 2026. So probably we get much higher price targets. And these things go in waves. So, nothing goes up straight up. We're long gold since, I think, 2011, November 2011, from 1480. And we'll get to 2,500. And the same thing, silver will also continue up. The first price target is 20.5 we have now on silver. But people should watch our research if they really want to take advantage. We're playing gold like it's the easiest market in the world. It goes up, it goes down exactly at the price levels. It's a very professional market, and mostly we play the gold market. And now, we're looking to take a long position in the VIX. We always play the VIX very nicely. So we're going to take a look if we get some signs that the cycle is going to top in about 10 days and then go long the VIX. But the gold market, till 2026, there's a bull market.
And what would you do, So where would you be with the stock market right now? With the stock market, you're saying you wouldn't be buying here at this levels. You'd be waiting if you're going to play some bounce and try to play momentum and whatever you're doing trading, which I don't advise people to do unless they know what they're doing. But
it was very nice, and we're now looking to get out. As you know, probably we have intraday service. So intraday, once or twice a day, we tell exactly where the short-term sell levels are. We're very close, and we do the same as in February before the market crashed. We're going to zero stocks, and we'll see what happens late June.
So you are out now. You have told your subscribers, get out, get out, get out. You played the bounce, get out.
That's just going the last couple of days. That's happening.
So you're exiting the market once again. Would it be safe to say you told your subscribers to play the bounce, and now the bounce is over?
Right. The cycle is stopping in 7 days. As you know, I don't like to play till the last moment. It has been very nice, but there's no sell signal yet. So what my subscribers do is they know when a cycle top is. If it comes early, you know where the sell signal is. So you can stay in until the cycle tops, until we get a sell signal, which is now, I think it's like 3,050 on the S&P, somewhere there. So it's not too far away.
All right. Anything you'd like to add? Is there any bright spot you can end on? Is there any good thing on the horizon for America or the world?
Well, guys, we just have to talk about interest rates a little bit, because the bonds, they had a big sell-off. Now they have the expected bounce, but longer term, the yields are not now going up. That's interesting, right?
Wow. So yields are going up.
Yeah.
So you think interest rates have bottomed out at this point? So yields are going to go up. I know the 10 years was at, I don't know, it got down to 0.3, ridiculous levels, and now it's gone up from there, up pretty significantly, doubled or more than doubled. But anyway, so you think the interest rates are on the upswing right now?
Well, we have a couple of bounds of lower rates. A couple of weeks of lower rates, but longer term, it's making a major reversal that will surprise everybody. And I think a lot of money is going to be lost once the bonds are really coming down, because people have no idea why they would come down. I also don't know why they would come down. So obviously something is going on. I just remind you, but I don't have any clues for that in Europe, interest rates went through the roof when Greece and Italy and Portugal were defaulting almost on their loans. So I don't know what the reason is. I just see that, now longer term, we have seen the low, and interest rates are going to rise.
And what about the U.S. dollar?
Well, the US dollar continues on a sell signal for the moment. I just happen to look at it now. As long as on the dollar index there's no close above 97, the sell signal continues. Uh, it's still going to be some weakness, but it will pick up later in a couple of weeks or in a month. It will pick up and start going back to the high.
So you don't think the dollar? A lot of people are thinking, oh, the dollar with all the money printing is going to crater and going to die off. You're not saying that right now. You're not saying a massive dollar weakness going into the end of the year or anything like that.
Well, as you know, it's based on cycles. People make different interpretations. So if the cycle is up, they say, oh, it's going to be okay. And if the cycle is down, it says, oh, it's going to be a catastrophe. So it depends when they come out with all these ideas, what the cycles say. It's not the reality. You know, if the market thinks the Fed is going to do something on interest rates, it already influences the market without them doing it. And I was trying to explain that the interpretation is more important. That's why Professor Schiller wrote a book about narratives. So finally, he came to the conclusion that narratives are more important than facts in influencing markets. The only thing is missing is, and that we have had for 30 years, is that you have to predict what the narrative is going to be. Is it going to be positive or negative? Otherwise, it doesn't help you much to know that narratives influence markets. So whatever the Fed does has nothing to do so much with reality, only interpretation, what people make out of it. So whenever they decide to do something, it depends on what the cycle is doing. Is it up or down? To know what the influence is going to be.
And what do you think the narrative for the dollar will be? Some people are calling for it to crash, crater, be cut in half, hyperinflation. Other people are expecting it to go higher, higher, higher as interest rates go. What's your call on the U.S. dollar? What's the narrative on the dollar?
Well, I never know what the narrative is. I only say is why would the dollar change direction? Because the cycle is changing the direction, and the narrative is then changing from negative to positive. So, but I'm looking also at the euro. It's still holding on, but you know, longer term the cycle is turning down again, and the euro is the anti-dollar. So longer term the dollar must go up again.
So you don't see the dollar cratering in any of your cycles anytime soon, at least not this year.
Not for the moment.
No, dollar's going to hang right where it needs to be.
And I don't think that what the European bank does is worse than what the what the American the Fed does is worse than what European bank does. So then there's no reason to be worried about the dollar because of what the Fed decides to print money.
So even with all the money printing, that's not going to crash the dollar, at least in the foreseeable future.
No.
Wow, that's an amazing call. Another amazing call. And when we have you back on, we'll look back at what your calls were, and you've made some good ones. I mean, nobody's 100%, but you're pretty good.
So the important thing to now is to watch what happens between the 26th and 26th. In my system, things have to happen at a certain moment and a certain level, which means is if it's not happening by then, but I think it's happening, the situation could be differently. So as you know, we always have a big discount for people who write in,
okay,
come to USA Watch Talk, and they get one, I'm not sure, or 2 months for free. So since it's such an important top, maybe we idea to take the free research. If you don't like it, that's fine. If you like it, you can always sign up. But this is an important turning point, and then you know exactly what we're thinking.
And I'm going to just throw this out because we didn't even talk about this, but I'll just say if you don't have an answer, you don't have an answer. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. You can just say you don't know, okay? But do you think with all this turmoil and all what's going on with the markets, the economy, the COVID crisis, the big giant smash down, and there's 4.5 jobs for every 4.5 people that are there to fill every single job that's opening up right now, massive unemployment. Is Donald Trump going to be reelected, or is he going to be booted out of office in your cycle?
Well, for the last 120, 130 years, once the cycle on interest rate turns up, the one that is the party that is in the White House continues to be reelected. Isn't that interesting? Don't ask me why. And the other thing is, if you would write down what Trump did without discussing anything about how he does it and what his personality is, then he probably will be reelected because he got some interesting things done. But if you think I don't like him, and that starts to be a main thing pushed by media, then he won't be reelected. Again, it has to do with the cycle. I find it interesting how people don't look at the pocketbooks. They don't look at results. They say, I don't like the guy. I don't care what happens to if I'm unemployed, the market goes down, NAFTA doesn't work out, Mexico is not going to work out. I don't like him, so I'm not going to vote for him. It's so amateuristic. Here in Europe, we don't believe that. Not that Europeans like Trump, but if you talk to some people who have an understanding, says we don't understand. Don't know people know what's going on. So the question is, the cycle looks like they're going to look at what he did and not what he says. So I guess he's going to be the next president based just on that cycle. If the cycle will be turning down, that means they're more interested in how he behaves than what he does.
And isn't that interesting that when rates begin to go up, the party in power stays in power? That is throughout history in your cycle work. And you're definitely seeing interest rates ding, 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 going up.
Yeah, well, it doesn't go, maybe, I don't know how fast it goes. I don't know where we're in November.
But the cycle, the trend is up, not down.
Yeah, the longer term trend, now we're talking about a couple of years is up. Another surprise, right?
Yeah, he surprised me. Very interesting. That was very, very interesting. It doesn't matter don't matter whether it's Democrat or Republican in the White House. You're in the okay, all right. Well, listen, I'll put up your Charles Nenner Research Center, or charlesnenner.com, I believe it is your website. I'll put the free little code. Is there a promo code, a Hunter or USA Watchdog or anything to put in there? Just write in how do you get the deal?
That's a good question. First, you get the free.
Okay.
That's a good question.
I think you have a free thing on there.
Assistants, but they're right on the phone now. You have 1 second.
Oh no. That's okay. Well, yeah. Well, no. I don't want to do it live on camera. There's a free trial on your website.
You know
it's
what?
always
I'll
on.
Check it out, and then you put it on your website. We'll talk later.
Yeah, we'll talk later, and I'll put the code in. You'll call me later, or you have your assistant call me, and we'll have a little code there for people to put in, and we'll work it that way. Okay, it'll be in the after the interview section for you folks at YouTube. Go to USA Watchdog. There's a click back. Go to the after the interview section, and all that stuff will be there. The Charles Nenner Research Center. Geopolitical and economic cycle expert Charles Nenner, world-renowned. Also, his website is charlesnenner.com. So, Charles Nenner, thanks for coming on. That was a fabulous interview. Thanks for coming on, and hey, thanks for being right. Okay, Charles Nenner, again, thanks for coming on. USAWatchdog.com.